Right now, 5 days after the strongest earthquake to hit Colombia this century, rescue crews are still pulling people from Iti rubble in Cali and Pereira, even as officials formally acknowledge the search for survivors is giving way to recovery. The confirmed death toll has climbed to 285 people. 379 remain listed as missing. Nearly 4,000 people have been injured. And running alongside every one of those numbers is a separate, deeply contested story. Whether Colombia's brand new government slowed its own disaster response by turning away foreign rescue teams in the critical first hours after the quake struck. This is the full, latest picture of what happened in Colombia, how the death toll has climbed day by day, and exactly what is known and still disputed about the foreign aid controversy surrounding it. No hype, no exaggeration, just what has actually been confirmed and what remains any open question. Drop a comment and tell me if you have any connection to the affected region, because I read every one of these. If you want grounded, sourced coverage instead of panic headlines, subscribe. It is free, and a like helps this reach people who need accurate information right now. Let us go for 5,000 likes on this one. Thank you. Now let us get into it. The earthquake itself struck on the morning of the 10th of August, a magnitude 7.4 event centered in western Colombia, an area that includes the cities of Cali and Pereira, along with the towns of Quibdó and El Cairo. The United States tsunami warning system confirmed no tsunami threat followed the quake, but the shaking itself was severe enough that President Abelardo de la Espriella declared a national emergency within hours, reporting an initial toll of 111 dead and 87 injured. Numbers he warned AT the time would almost certainly continue climbing. They did, steadily, over the days that followed. By the 11th of August, the count had risen to 169 dead, with 188 people listed as missing. By the 12th, it had climbed to 265, with the president reporting nearly 500 people missing, though civilian-run tracking databases were already putting that number considerably higher, above 4,100. By the 13th, official figures had risen past 270, and as of the most recent update from Colombia's National Disaster Risk Management Unit, known by its Spanish acronym UNGRD, the confirmed toll stands at 285 dead, 1,975 injured, and 379 still missing, with 354 people confirmed rescued alive from the rubble so far. UNGRD Director David Santiago Tamayo confirmed this week that the operation is formally shifting from search and rescue into recovery, acknowledging directly that the window for finding additional survivors alive is closing, even as crews continue working, through collapsed buildings in both Pereira and Cali. The scale of the physical damage helps explain why that search has taken so long. According to UNGRD, the earthquake affected 15 separate departments and 426 municipalities across Colombia, touching an estimated 45,523 families, or roughly 102,063 people in some way. In Cali alone, Colombia's third largest city, the mayor reported 32 buildings had collapsed. One of the more remarkable individual survival stories to emerge came out of Pereira, where a 32-year-old woman named Daniela was pulled alive from the wreckage of a destroyed hotel after spending nearly 38 hours trapped beneath the rubble. Schools across the affected region have also been left in ruins, complicating the picture for families already displaced from their homes. Now to the part of this story that has become a genuine political flashpoint, and it is worth walking through exactly what is confirmed versus what remains disputed, since accounts from different sources do not fully agree. In the critical first days after the earthquake, Colombia's disaster management agency, under its then director, Javier Pava, made the decision not to formally request foreign search and rescue teams. According to a letter Pava later sent to Colombia's foreign ministry, dated the 11th of August, that decision was based on his own assessment of the emergency at the time. As international offers of help began arriving from across the region, several governments publicly described their assistance as being turned down. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum stated publicly that Colombia had rejected help from Mexican rescue workers. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele made a similar claim, saying Colombia had turned down international offers of rescue teams specifically, while requesting only financial assistance for affected families. China's ambassador to Bogotá separately said his government was struggling to coordinate assistance directly with Colombian officials. At the same time, the picture on the ground was not uniformly one of rejection. A Mexican search and rescue team from the group known as the Topos de Tlatelolco, already deployed in the region after assisting with earthquake recovery in Caracas, Venezuela, back in June, was photographed working through rubble in Cali as early as the 12th of August. reporting from Bloomberg on the 13th, described a separate, later Mexican rescue team specifically being turned away, even as the death toll continued climbing past 270, suggesting the country's posture toward outside assistance may have shifted more than once, or applied unevenly across different offers arriving at different times. Colombia's government has firmly pushed back on the suggestion that any of this was politically motivated. Foreign Minister Omar Bula stated directly that decisions to accept or decline foreign assistance were not based on political considerations. And UNGRD Director Tamayo said the country would receive international cooperation according to the actual needs of the emergency as they evolved, rather than turning away help as a blanket policy. Colombian officials have also said publicly that the country never issued an outright refusal of support from other nations, but would only accept international search and rescue teams that met recognized international certification standards, a more specific and narrower explanation than a simple rejection of foreign help. Whatever the full explanation turns out to be, the practical response scaled up considerably in the days that followed the initial controversy. According to reporting compiled by Colombian outlets, 12 countries ultimately committed aid and rescue teams to the response. The European Union allocated €2 million in humanitarian assistance. El Salvador sent 2 planes carrying 100 tons of humanitarian relief supplies. Venezuela, despite still recovering from its own earthquakes back in June, offered to deploy its own rescue workers and humanitarian aid, with its foreign minister publicly expressing solidarity with Colombia. By the 12th of August, NPR reported that tons of aid from regional partners had begun arriving in the country, even as the underlying question of why that aid had not arrived sooner, or in full, during the earthquake's critical first hours, continued to generate scrutiny of the new government's handling of its first major crisis. It is worth understanding the broader context shaping the response in the hardest hit areas, because conditions on the ground were not uniform across the 15 affected departments. The Chaco Department, one of Colombia's poorest regions, has for years been shaped by deep poverty and armed conflict involving groups that emerged following the country's 2016 peace accord with leftist rebel forces, producing waves of forced displacement that predate this earthquake by decades. Aid organizations that already had staff and infrastructure in place in Chaco, built up over years of supporting the peace process and responding to the region's ongoing violence, have said that existing presence allowed them to pivot into disaster relief more quickly than in areas without that same established groundwork, a genuinely important distinction in a country where disaster response and years of prior conflict recovery work are, in some regions, deeply intertwined. There is also a broader seismic context worth understanding, because this earthquake did not strike an unusually quiet part of the world. Rodrigo Leon Loya, a seismologist and geosciences professor at the University of the Andes, said the probability of another earthquake of similar magnitude striking the exact same area again soon is low, but that he would not rule out further seismic activity in the broader region, pointing out simply that Colombia is full of active fault lines. As he put, the real question is not whether an earthquake of this kind can happen again in Colombia, but when. So what does all of this actually mean right now? 5 days on, it means the death toll, already at 285, is very likely to continue climbing in the coming days, since 379 people remain listed as missing, and the operation has now formally entered its recovery phase rather than active rescue. It means the foreign aid controversy surrounding the government's early response remains genuinely unresolved, with credible claims from multiple foreign governments that specific offers of help were turned down, set against Colombia's own consistent public position that any limits placed on foreign assistance were about certification standards and evolving need rather than politics, a dispute that is likely to continue playing out even as the immediate recovery effort moves forward. And it means the disaster has landed hardest, and in some ways most complicatedly, in regions like Chaco, where existing poverty and years of armed conflict were already straining the same communities, now trying to recover from this earthquake on top of everything that came before it. The honest, grounded summary is this. A magnitude 7.4 earthquake struck western Colombia on the 10th of August, and 5 days later the confirmed death toll stands at 285, with 379 people still missing and nearly 4,000 injured as search and rescue operations formally shift into recover. Colombia's disaster management agency, under its previous director, made an early decision not to formally request foreign search and rescue teams, a decision multiple foreign governments have publicly characterized as an outright rejection of their offered help, while Colombian officials maintain no political considerations were involved, and that assistance was ultimately accepted according to certification standards and the emergency's evolving needs. 12 countries have since committed aid, and the country's newest government now faces its first major crisis, testing its disaster response even as recovery efforts in the hardest hit cities continue. We are going to keep tracking this as the recovery operation continues, sourced the same way we did today, straight from UNGRD, Colombian officials, and the international reporting on the ground, not recycled headlines. Subscribe so you do not miss the latest confirmed numbers as they update, because based on how this has unfolded so far, both the death toll and the political story around it are very likely to keep developing. And leave that comment below. Tell me what you think about how this response has been handled. Because behind every one of these numbers is a woman named Daniela who spent 38 hours trapped under a collapsed hotel in Pereira before rescuers finally reached her, a family in Chaco rebuilding on top of poverty and conflict that were already there long before the ground shook, and a rescue crew somewhere in Cali right now, still searching, even as officials publicly acknowledge that window is closing. 5,000 likes on this one. Let us go. See you in the next one.